Hi, I'm Will Howard, and I'm in one of the most favorite cities in the United States. I'm in Savannah, Georgia. And we are standing in front of, and I'll show you as the camera pans around to me, the most photographed, the most popular place for carriages and buses to come. We're in front of the Mercer Williams house, where a murder took place a number of years ago, which caused an author from New York to write a book called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Now we're going to talk with Professor John Duncan, who was involved in the movie. And Professor Duncan is a contributor to the History Channel. He was also an actor in a number of different movies, including this one.
Including this one, indeed.
Okay, now tell us about the author, the book, how you met him, and what happened here.
Well, John Berendt is a native of Syracuse, New York. He came to Savannah, fell in love with it, discovered the killing of Danny Hansford by James Arthur Williams 30 years ago in the early 1980s. He wrote this nonfiction novel. He didn't expect very much, but it proved to be the longest on the New York Times bestseller list for 4 years, 2 months, 216 weeks. That's a record. The book, of course, was read by several million people. But of course, when Clint Eastwood came to town in 1997 to do the movie, that's when it shot up to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And
So tens of millions of people have seen the movie.
tens of millions. And Savannah was, regionally known. But Midnight has increased the visibility of Savannah throughout the world. And Savannah now is a destination from tourists from everywhere. So we welcome tourists to Savannah. It's a wonderful spot to spend days here.
Now, you did a walkthrough in the movie, is that right, with your
I
wife?
did.
And
I had a short speaking part with John Cusack on one of the squares, and my wife had a scene in the Married Women's Card Club, which is a real institution here in Savannah. And we had great fun with all the actors. Even Clint Eastwood was not chatty, but he came to our house and watched a slide presentation on the characters, the real characters in the book and movie. And it was wonderful, wonderful experience.
I was enchanted. In fact, I was seduced by the city of Savannah. People ask me, how did you choose Savannah? It chose me that day. And from then on as well. When I went over the bridge into Savannah from South Carolina, I was overcome by the beauty of the place. Spectacular beauty. I've never been in a place like this. The greenery, the vegetation surround on all sides, above, underfoot, wherever. And the mansions were absolutely spectacular. They were 19th century, primarily 19th century Victorian mansions and townhouses and little 18th century wooden dwellings. I was having the time of my life. I loved being there. I loved the stories. I loved the people. I loved writing about Savannah. But it's about a very strange circumstance. And it turned out to be widely popular. So I was delighted and totally surprised, taken by surprise. And then the movie came out. I thought Clint Eastwood did a very good job with it. And I enjoyed it. And a lot of people like it very much. In the movie, John Cusack plays me. I'm a bit changed in it. The movie suggests that I went to Savannah to write a piece for Town and Country magazine, which I'd never written for. After my book came out and then the movie, tourism climbed a lot in Savannah, and a lot of my friends and acquaintances went to Savannah really because of the book. And I am delighted to say that not one single person has been disappointed by what they found in Savannah. Savannah does not disappoint. No matter what's happened to it since the book, it's prospered and more people go there. Savannah has remained Savannah, thank God.
now, you did a walkthrough in the movie, is that right, with your wife?
Did.
And
I had a short speaking part with John Cusack on one of the squares, And my wife had a scene in the Married Women's Card Club, which is a real institution here in Savannah. And we had great fun with all the actors. Even Clint Eastwood was not chatty, but he came to our house and watched a slide presentation on the characters, the real characters in the book and movie. And it was wonderful, wonderful experience.
Now you have a house right here on the square.
We do. When we decided to get married back in 1976, we picked the square. We thought this was the prettiest square in Savannah. Still think it's the prettiest square in Savannah. Waited for a house to come up for sale. We paid $36,000 for our house. Our only regret is we didn't buy every other house that came up for sale. They would have all been good investments because they now sell for several $1 million.
I'll bet. Can we take a peek at your house?
We certainly can. Come this way. Okay.
So this is Monterey Square.
Named for the Battle of Monterey during the Mexican War. And the monument that we see here is the Pulaski Monument. He was the highest ranking foreign general that was killed in the American Revolution at the Battle of Savannah, October the 9th, 1779. Some say it's the prettiest monument in Savannah, and I tend to agree because I live just right over there.
Let's go. And how old is your house?
The house was a very modest house when it was built in 1869, just 2 stories over a basement. But in the 1880s, a wealthy merchant bought the property and transformed it into a Second Empire Baroque fantasy. That was in 1897.
So this is your modest house.
Indeed. It was transformed in the 1890s, 1897 to be exact, into a Second Empire Baroque fantasy. Now that style was popularized as early as the 1850s in America by a Danish architect who came to Savannah and did a number of houses. And although it's not documented, we believe that Detlef Leono is the architect of this house.
I don't know that name, but I'm sure he's somebody famous. But I've never heard of a Baroque fantasy. Can you show me?
Well, it's urban for one thing.
Okay.
It's got coins at the corner.
Okay.
It's got a mansard roof.
Should we go up there and look and see?
And it's got towers and lots of decoration.
Oh, cool. Neat. Can we take a peek?
Yes.
Wow. What describe this room?
Well, in the 1890s, the Levy family spent a lot of money, $4,000. We spent, by the way, much more and did much less when we restored. But they took out the pocket doors there, put in a broken arch, added cornices and pier mirror, left the marble mantels, put in these gasoliers, or chandeliers, I guess we'd call them today.
Well, gasoliers meant they were gas.
Gas, and you can see the little cut-off valves underneath.
Yes.
And stenciled the ceilings, probably by an itinerant Italian stenciler that did at least 3 houses on the square. But the amazing thing is the Levy family in the 1890s tore off a back porch and added this den, we call it. And it is over the top, it seems to me.
It's beautiful.
Stained glass windows made by a firm in Ohio, and very elaborate, ornate ceiling, and a fireplace, and a built-in sideboard with mirrors up above that gives an infinity of reflection. And of course, also the marquetry or parquet floors.
So this is your porch?
This is our porch. It was actually originally a kitchen and butler's pantry, but we don't cook very much, so we opted to have a big back porch.
It's really cool. There's a lot of horns here.
My father was the great white hunter. At age 82, he was still riding a horse and shooting those animals in the forests and fields of South Carolina. As a child, I would not eat deer meat in protest. Didn't do any good. But now that my father's dead and those poor deer are dead, I don't mind giving them both in all a little immortality.
Tell me more about John Berendt. Now, you met John Berendt, the author of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
Right. Now, he decided to write a book, and he interviewed everybody on the square. And so he interviewed me, and over the years we've become fast friends. He is currently researching New Orleans, which he's come to love also. He's done basically 3 books so far. The Midnight book, The City of Falling Angels, which is about Venice, Italy, and then he wrote a child's book. He originally called it Upper West Side Blues, but when it was finally published, it was My Little Blue Jays, and it's a child's book. But now he's interested in New Orleans, and this will be his 4th book.
Now, you made arrangements for us to go up and visit John Berendt at his home, and we're going to cut to some of that footage right now.
I sort of stumbled into Savannah the first time I went there. I had gone from New York to Charleston and with friends, and they'd gone back after the weekend, and I noticed on the map that Savannah was not far away. I'd heard the name. I didn't know anything about Savannah. Not many people did. So I decided to take the car and just ride down there. It's a less than 2-hour drive. Then I had a career as a magazine editor. That's what I really was. I wrote columns for Esquire. I had been the editor-in-chief of New York Magazine, a weekly, so it was pretty heady stuff. But the time came when I wanted to write something of permanence. I mean, you know, you write for magazines and they're thrown away in a few months, and so you can't ever show anybody your work. So I thought, I want to write a book of some sort so that I can, when I meet new people, I can give them a copy of my book as we part, and I can say, maybe you like this. I wrote it. And a book stays on the shelf for centuries, you know. So I decided to write a book, and I decided Savannah would be the place. I only wanted to write a book that the critics would like, and that I could prove to myself and to everybody else that I could write a book, not just a magazine article, not just the short pieces. So that was my intention. And when I was writing Midnight, I was having the time of my life. I loved being there. I loved the stories. I loved the people. I loved writing about Savannah. And people would ask me, do you think this book will be popular? And I said, people who read it will like it. But it's about a very strange circumstance. And I said, it's going to be rather special. And I think my best hope is that there'll be a cult that likes it. I had no idea that it would be so popular. It took me totally by surprise. I was obviously delighted about it. But you see, I thought that it was not a mainstream book, but the mainstream was widening while I was down there writing the book. At any rate, it's not just the beauty, not just the history, but the people who live in Savannah that attracted me so much. They are, quite frankly, eccentric. And I love eccentric people because eccentric people are artists, and their masterpieces are their own lives. They decide who they want to be, and they are that person. And Savannah loves its eccentrics. They dote on them. They love to talk, love to gossip, and what better to gossip about than strange people? So they talk about other people, and the stranger the better. Now, the people who are acting strangely, these eccentrics, know that they're beloved if only because they give people something to talk about. So it only encourages them to be odder and stranger, and they become more and more lovable and loved in Savannah.
Well, the movie came about after the book was such a tremendous success and being on the bestseller list that broke all records for fiction and nonfiction books. And Warner Brothers decided to do the movie with Clint Eastwood directing it, and they came to Savannah. During the shooting, Mr. Eastwood told me that he would like for me to play the role of the judge, which I thought was a joke to start with, but he was serious. Our friendship with Jim Williams went back to when we bought Armstrong House from him to use as a law office. And we had a very pleasant relationship with Mr. Williams. He lived in Mercer House, but he had done a lot of work in Armstrong House and had used it for showing his European antiques. I had previously been in Gingerbread Man, which was written by John Gresham, not as a book. He wrote it for a television series, and Hollywood bought it up and had it directed here in Savannah by Robert Altman. I played the senior partner in the law firm. I was asked by Robert Redford to play a role in The Legend of Bagger Vance, which was also shot in Savannah. I played the role of a boarder in the boarding house scene. It took about 2 days to shoot that one scene. Clint Eastwood would have shot it in about an hour.